Welcome to a fascinating journey into the world of metaphysics with Metaphysics for Everyone by Conny Mendez. In this captivating book, Mendez guides us through the wonders of metaphysics, offering a unique and transformative perspective on life and reality. Conny Mendez, recognized as one of the leading exponents of metaphysical thought in the 20th century, invites us to explore the spiritual laws that govern the universe. Her clear and practical approach makes metaphysics accessible to everyone, regardless of their level of experience on the subject. Within the pages of this book, we will discover how our thoughts and beliefs shape our reality. With clear examples and practical exercises, Mendez shows us how we can use metaphysics to transform our lives, manifesting love, abundance, and well-being. The author immerses us in topics such as the law of attraction, creative visualization, and connecting with our higher self. As we progress through the reading, we realize that every word has the power to create and transform, and that we are the architects of our destiny. Metaphysics for Everyone is not just a book but a practical guide to changing the way we think and create our realities. Conny Mendez shows us that metaphysics is not an abstract concept but a powerful tool that we can all use to enhance our lives. As you delve into these pages, prepare to experience a profound transformation. This book is an invitation to discover the unlimited potential that resides within you and unleash the power of your mind to create the life you desire. Are you ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery and personal growth? Metaphysics for Everyone awaits you with open arms. Discover the power of metaphysics and make every day of your life a masterpiece of conscious creation.
Introduction. This book is not written for academic study, it is written to be understood and used. A college degree in psychology, philosophy, or metaphysics isn't required. All you need is a desire to achieve a richer, more fulfilling life and apply the basic truths you'll find in these pages. It is estimated that we use only about 10% of our brain cells, 10% of our potential mental powers. But those dormant, unused cells are there, waiting, ready to be awakened every time we hear or read or experience something new to us. And the second time we come across that new thought or experience, more cells are aroused, more connections are made, and we understand it a little better. Within a short while, the mind becomes enlightened, as more and more awakened cells begin to work on the new concept. In other words, the acceptance and understanding of ideas is an automatic process that begins with the simple activity of repetition. There is no superhuman effort, no burst of genius required, only the desire to learn and the patience to read and re-read until the ideas behind the words become automatic, and suddenly, or so it seems, understanding is there. It's that simple. Carry this book with you. Keep a copy next to your favorite chair or the bedside table. Read and re-read, especially when you are faced with a problem or with a distressing life situation. You'll discover something truly amazing. You will open the book at random and within a few sentences, you'll find yourself thinking, this could have been written for me. And you'll be right. It was. Jesus Christ said, "In my Father's house, there are many mansions." Metaphysics is one of these mansions or dimensions. It is the study of mental spiritual laws. It does not deal with spiritualism itself, although this is another of those mansions. This little book has brought peace, fulfillment, and prosperity to many. May it bring them to you. And may you be blessed. Chapter 1, Dynamic Christianity. Before you undertake any job, from a career to tuning up your own car, you have to know something about it. You go to school. You apprentice yourself to someone skilled in that particular enterprise. It's just good sense. And yet there is one job we all find ourselves thrust blindly into, untrained, uneducated, without the vaguest idea of the hazards involved or the goals to be achieved. And it's the most difficult job on earth. The job of life. To make it even more confusing, we don't even know what life is all about. It's full of contradictions. Why do some, born with wealth, health and good fortune, turn all these advantages into a downward spiral of misfortune and misery? Why do others achieve good fortune without visible effort? We search for the logic behind these contradictory facts, the rules of the game we find ourselves caught up in. We make guesses, suppositions, and we indulge in wishful thinking. And still, most of us are as puzzled at the hour of our death as we were at the hour of our birth. What was it all about? There is one great truth that can guide us in the direction of understanding. What you think is, thoughts are things. And your thoughts, your attitudes are what will determine everything that happens in your life. What you think about yourself, about others, about the world and events that surround you controls your life. And you are at the controls. Like all great truths, this fact is startlingly simple to put into words. If you think you are healthy, you will be healthy. But if you turn your thinking around, and begin to fear illness, you will feel ill. And feeling sick is being sick. If you were born to riches, it's likely that you will continue to grow in wealth, unless someone convinces you that destiny exists, and that you have no control over it. Then any little setback will magnify itself into a catastrophe. You will begin to believe that your fortunes have changed, and once you believe that, they will change. Your life and everything that happens to you is a product of the beliefs you hold and the words you say. This is a principle, a basic, unchanging law called the principle of mentalism. If you believe that accidents lurk around every corner just waiting to happen to you, if you are convinced that the ailments of old age are inevitable, if you are certain that bad luck dogs your very step, all these beliefs will manifest themselves in everything you do. But just the opposite is equally true. If you believe that only good will come to you, then it will. This is called a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you make a prediction, good or bad, you begin to make it come true. We are never conscious of all the ideas that inhabit our minds. Their formation is continuous, building on everything we hear, see, and learn. Yet our actions are the product of those ideas, the majority of which lie below the level of conscious thought. And we are just as ignorant of the very laws that govern our lives, the so-called laws of creation, and we spend our lives haphazardly constructing conditions which conflict with those laws. Blindly, with neither compass nor rudder, we go on watching grand ideas turn into disappointments, blaming our failures on life itself, and chalking it all up to the will of God. Since you've read this far, you've probably begun to realize that a human being is not, as you may have been led to believe, a sea-tossed cork with no direction other than the whims of the elements. Far from it. Man's life, his world, his circumstances, and the events of his life are the products of his creation, and his alone. He is the ruler of his own mental empire, and if he chooses to believe that he is that storm-racked cork, he's free to be so. Free is the key word here. To be born with free will means to have that individual right to choose one's own direction. We can think positively or negatively, optimistically or pessimistically. We can think of evil and ugliness and bring them into being. Or we can think of beauty, goodness, and happiness, and create them for our environment, external and internal. Metaphysics has always taught that what we think about most strongly, most often passes into our subconscious, where it establishes itself and becomes a reflex. Modern psychology has recently discovered this ancient truth. When a human being finds himself immersed in the ocean of his ignorance, in a disaster of his own making, he will usually turn to God and pray for deliverance from this misery. And it appears that sometimes God will hear, and sometimes not. If not, family and friends will offer the inadequate consolation that it is God's will. It sounds like another way of saying God's ill will, at least to the person involved. But this is in direct conflict with what we have been taught about the Creator. He is our Father, full of love and compassion, infinitely wise, eternally and mercifully with us. How can such a wise and loving Father allow such suffering to his own children? We, as merely mortal parents, could never bring ourselves to inflict such punishment on our children. We could not condemn a child to eternal flames for making the natural mistakes of childlike ignorance. Yet we seem to believe that God could do so, that he has all the characteristics of a capricious schoolmaster, on who is petulant, vindictive and full of ill will, always on the watch for the slightest misdeed and quick to subject us to the most unfair and disproportionate punishments. This is the way we thought in our infancy, before we learned the rules of behavior. And this is the way we must continue to think, until we learn the rules of life. We have already learned that the calamities of life are of our own creation. And this is one way in which we are fashioned in God's image and likeness. We are, each and every one of us, the creators of our own circumstances. Why is it then, that God seems to hear us at some times and not at others? The answer lies in the nature of prayer. Prayer is the purest and highest form of thought. It is polarizing the mind to the highest possible degree. When we pray, when we think of and toward God, we create vibrations of mental light, and thoughts of God transform the darkness surrounding us, as if we brought a brilliant lamp into the darkest of rooms. And if we pray to God as a loving, caring Father who wishes nothing but joy and fulfillment to his children, he will listen. But if we pray, as so many of us do, in terms such as, "Please, God, solve this problem for me, even though I know I somehow deserve to be miserable and this is all some kind of test of my worth which I don't understand," well, all we are telling him is that we really don't think our prayers are worthy of answering. Furthermore, we are praying to that malevolent schoolmaster, that vindictive God who likes nothing better than to condemn us for our transgressions. In other words, we're praying to the wrong God. And, to paraphrase, you get what you pray for. God is not the judge, the policeman, the tyrant, or the executioner that so many of us have been taught. He is simply the one who created the laws of existence. Whether we choose to abide by them or ignore them is our decision, and the results of such a decision are our doing. There are 7 of these laws, 7 principles that govern all things at all times. They are unchanging and unending. They are the order and harmony of all creation. The soul has no need for policemen or judges, for he who does not abide by these laws creates his own punishment. Therefore, once you have learned these laws, and have learned to think correctly, you will automatically be following the laws, and all the good that God wishes for you will show itself. St. Paul said that God is closer to us than our feet, our hands, the very air we take into our lungs. We do not have to shout for him to hear. Merely thinking of him is enough. The disarray of our lives will begin to rearrange itself into order. He created us and knows us better than we can know ourselves. He knows why we behave as we do, and he does not expect us to behave as saints when we are only learning to walk in this spiritual life. At this point, I don't want you to believe a single word I have written without proving it to yourself. This is your divine and sovereign right. Don't do as you have done in the past, accepting all you are told and all that you see at face value, until you have taken the opportunity to judge for yourself between good and evil. The mechanics of thought. Awake or asleep, we spend 24 hours a day in unceasing thought. Like an unedited film, disconnected thoughts run through our minds, triggered by every sight, sound, smell, taste, touch or experience. And a few of these thoughts we hold and examine more closely than the rest. Why? Because these few have stimulated some feeling within, whether a feeling of fear or repulsion, affection or attraction. It isn't the nature of the feeling, but the strength of it, the interest it holds, and so we concentrate on it, perhaps mention it to someone else. It is this repetition, this strength of interest that leads a thought into the unconscious where it is engraved in memory. This is the process of meditation. Once an idea is etched into the subconscious, it becomes a reflex. Just as your leg jerks when the doctor taps you just under the kneecap with his rubber hammer, you experience a feeling, an attitude, a reaction when one of those deeply engraved ideas is touched upon by some event or experience in your life. Your attitude reflects the original feeling you experienced when you first pondered that idea. In metaphysics, we call this a concept, in the sense of a belief or conviction. The subconscious is incapable of discrimination. It does not think for itself. It cannot protest, nor does it have free will. Its only function is to summon up a reflex according to a command from the sensory and emotional centers of the conscious mind. In this sense, it is a computer memory, even more complex than the most capacious data storage systems ever made. And it is just as emotionless as a computer. It has no sense of humor, and makes no distinction between an order given jokingly or a serious command. If your nose is a bit larger than the standards of beauty call for, you may jokingly refer to it as a potato nose, as a minor defense mechanism. But the humorless subconscious will attempt to carry out your command, in its most literal sense, to make your nose look more and more like your description. And soon it will. To you, because of repetition. To others, because you will unconsciously begin to hold your head a certain way, and repeat that certain phrase so often that others will begin to notice what had probably escaped their attention in the beginning. The word metaphysics means, beyond the physical. And metaphysics is the science which deals with all things undetectable by the physical senses. It gives reason to things we don't understand, the mysteries that surround us, all those things that seem not to have a reasonable explanation. Yet, as shrouded as the subject matter may be, metaphysics is a most precise science, a fact you will discover for yourself as you read on. Do you remember the first time you heard the phrase, catch a cold? Probably you were too young to remember, but your subconscious does. It was said by your elders, who taught you that a cold was something to be feared, or at least avoided, and with repetition, you adopted their feelings. Never get your feet wet, don't get caught in a draft, stay away from people who are coughing, sneezing, or sniffling because you'll soon be doing the same. Little by little, this became engraved on your subconscious, forming a reflex center. You never had to think about it to heed these warnings, the reflex did it for you. And the damage was done, because your subconscious will do its best to give you all the symptoms of a cold whenever you get caught in one of those cold-catching situations. Some people don't even need the situations. Once they hear about a bug that's going around, a tickle begins in the back of their throats. We know today that colds aren't caused by wet feet or open windows, but the idea is already there, firmly implanted and rooted to resist the firm tugs of reason. And radio and TV have done their best to nourish those erroneous roots. All the influences of your formative years have become reflexes such as this, and these are the automatic causes of all that is bad, all that is good that happens to you. These reflexes are your life pattern, a basement full of other people's ideas which affect every facet of your life, body, soul, and mind. But the important point is that, if you had not accepted these ideas, if they hadn't been pounded into you like a nail into wood, if you have been able to exercise your free will, no germ or virus, no power on earth could have been able to make your subconscious react in any other way than the way you wished. Your will, negative or positive, is the magnet that attracts those germs or viruses in your direction, with a force far stronger than the actual circumstances of a germ-laden environment. Again, I stress, your negative or positive attitude towards the facts is what will determine the outcome for you. The infallible formula. We have found that the human mind is a storehouse of accumulated opinions, concepts, and convictions, many of which are contrary to truth and in conflict with the basic principles of creation. It is these erroneous thoughts which manifest themselves as the sufferings and problems that afflict us: sickness, accidents, pain, arguments, disharmony, poverty, failure, and even death. None of these misconceptions fits within the boundaries of truth. And, fortunately, there are ways to erase these false beliefs and replace them with truths, which will not only produce the happy and positive conditions we desire, but will prevent the return of those negative influences. With the establishment of truth in our subconscious minds, the order has been changed, the magnet has reversed its polarity, and it becomes impossible to attract the negative factors which no longer produce any response from us. The infallible formula is simply this: whenever something undesirable happens to you, you fall ill, have an accident, are robbed, are offended or emotionally hurt by someone, you have been the cause of hurt to another, you have been afflicted by a physical, moral, or character defect, you find yourself hating another, you suffer from the pangs of too much love or jealousy or love misdirected, you are the victim of injustice, if any from the infinite list of misfortunes that can befall a human being happens to you, you must seek and know the truth. Jesus Christ, the greatest of the metaphysical masters, said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." John 8:32. What is the truth? Simply, it is perfect harmony. And if what is happening to you is not born of harmony, justice, goodness, freedom, health, wisdom, love, joy, then it is not truth. It acts in contradiction to the supreme harmony. It is a lie. Your higher self is a perfect being, it always has been. It cannot become ill because it is life. Because it is life, it cannot die. It cannot age, suffer, fear nor sin. It has no need to fight. It is unchanging. It is beautiful. It is love, intelligence, wisdom, and joy. In this, you have the truth, your truth and mine, the truth of every human being at this moment and for all time. That isn't to say that every human being is God. No more than a single drop of water is the ocean. But that drop is a part of the ocean, and contains within itself all that is the ocean. From a molecule's viewpoint, that droplet is oceanic in dimension. It has been stated that whatever you project, whatever is happening to you, whatever you are doing or suffering that goes against perfect harmony is due to an erroneous belief within you which is manifesting itself outside you because of your own reflex. This has nothing to do with your essence, your superior being. This is unchangeable, and its conditions and circumstances are at all times perfect. And so, when faced by adverse circumstances such as those mentioned a few paragraphs ago, keep in mind what I have said and apply the truth, simply by saying, mentally or out loud, "I do not accept it." Say it firmly but with infinite gentleness. Mental efforts do not need physical force, neither thought nor soul have, or require, muscles, their strength derives from spiritual forces. So, when you say, "I do not accept it," do so as though you were saying, "I don't want this." Calmly, yet with complete conviction and firmness, without shouting, violence, or display. You are making a statement. After having made your statement, remember that your higher self, that superior being, together with all its conditions, is perfect. Now say, I declare the truth of this problem to be harmony, love, intelligence, justice, abundance, life, health, any and all positive qualities which oppose the negative condition in which you find yourself. Thank you, Father, for I know you have heard me. At this point, there is no need for you to believe what you are reading. You must only believe what you say. That you do not, will not accept this situation. That it is contrary to harmony. That harmony will be restored. If you believe and apply these thoughts, you will soon come to believe in their power. In the language of metaphysics, this is called a treatment, and for it to be effective, a positive attitude must be maintained. This continuing positive reinforcement is what builds a new reflex, to replace the negative one which brought about unwanted circumstances. Belief begins with hope, not with doubt. Therefore, you cannot doubt the efficacy of the treatment, nor can you express the previous concepts, opinions, and beliefs which led to the unpleasant situation. Such words would only nullify the positive effect. St. Paul said, "But be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Romans 12:2. This is the purpose of the treatment, transforming the mental pattern that has been dominating the subconscious, the mental climate that has created the negative environment in which you have been living. This total transformation comes with the changing of each old, inharmonious belief as it arises in life, or in the conscience, changing, renewing, such beliefs to conform with the truth. Metaphysically expressed, those convictions which have become most deeply embedded are called crystallizations. While these require much more effort to erase than others, each and every denial or disharmony, and affirmation of truth erodes away at the false concepts until we are left with nothing but the truth. And with the establishment of truth, you will discover miracles in every aspect of your life. What you see as defects within yourself are only illusions. Once you know the truth, the perfection of the higher self, the illusion of these flaws will fade and disappear. And you will be made again in your perfect form, the true self, your personal Christ, the image of the Father in which you were made. Any student of Christian metaphysics will confirm this. Never forget this great truth. Practice it from this moment on. The longer you act upon it, the greater the results you will see in your personal evolution toward perfect harmony. Remember that you are as unique as your fingerprints. You are one of a kind, created to fulfill a purpose no one else can achieve. It has taken many thousands of years of evolution to produce the you that exists today. God's works are infinite, and you and I are but two expressions of His creation. You must remember, too, that your Christ is wisdom itself. He is God's highest expression of love for itself. He is God's highest expression of love for man, and He has been waiting these many centuries for you to recognize Him. Now the moment of recognition has arrived. Talk to Him, consult Him, wait for His answer. Once you have come to understand and accept that He is your supreme guide and teacher, you will witness His rebirth. Christ is the Messiah, and His coming is prophesied for this era. This isn't to say that He will dwell among us in the flesh, but that we can all find Him born once again in our hearts and minds, which are His kingdom. This is why He was called Christ, the Greek word for Messiah, or anointed king in Hebrew. The decree. Every spoken word is a decree which is outwardly manifested. The word is a spoken thought, and we have already learned of the power of thought. There are two sayings of Jesus that have not been studied closely enough. One of these is, "For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned." Most have interpreted this as meaning that others will judge us by what we say and write, and though this is true, it is not the full meaning of Christ's own words. Jesus taught the truths of metaphysics at a time when the majority of the human race was not sufficiently mature to understand it. He was aware of this, and a number of times, he said that there was much that he had to say, but that we would not be able to understand. But there would always be a few who understood and would instruct others, who hath ears, let him hear. The second reference he made to the power of words was this, not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth a man, for out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. In this response to a trivial question about dietary law lies a great metaphysical truth in all its explicit beauty. I suggest that you spend a day just listening to yourself, to the decrees you make so casually. Business is rotten. Kids today are a lost generation. We'll never get there in this traffic. You can't trust anyone these days. It's not safe to walk the streets. Don't touch that, you'll break it. With my luck, I'll probably fill in your favorite disaster. I've never seen it to fail. I love, but it upsets my stomach. I can feel one of those migraines coming on. He'll rob you blind. She's a vicious gossip. There's no point in trying. You can see the pattern. You've made the prophesies, and your attitudes govern your actions to the point where you make sure those prophesies are fulfilled. Never forget, every word you utter is a decree, whether positive or negative. When it is positive, it is manifested in good. When negative, only bad can follow. If your words are against someone, it's the same as condemning yourself. That person lives up, or down, to your expectations, at least where you are concerned. But when you speak with kindness and understanding towards others, they will return kindness and understanding to you. And when something unpleasant happens to you, don't think, I wasn't expecting that. Think instead of statements you have made in the past that predicted, and literally caused, your misfortune. It could have been one of those idle statements, like those above. Every time I make an investment, I lose my shirt. Jesus was not one to waste words, and he expressed himself eloquently in saying, "For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh." He is telling us that it is the feeling that accompanies a thought which engraves it upon the subconscious and gives it its power. The first feeling we learn is fear, taught to us by our parents in their desire to keep us from harm, by religious teachers in their desire to keep us from wrongdoing. Fear makes our hearts accelerate, we say. My heart jumped into my throat, when we speak of great fear we've felt. And it is that fear from the heart, that lies behind all the negative phrases mentioned above. St. Paul said that we would be transformed by the renewing of our minds. But how is this renewal accomplished? Start with your negative statements. Each time you find yourself saying something negative, you've pulled out an erroneous concept that was buried in your subconscious, and you'll recognize the feeling that goes along with it. Erase it. Whether the emotion is fear, dislike, despair, or anger, deny it as a lie and then affirm the truth, so that it will no longer manifest itself in your actions. You'll soon find that you speak differently, and your way of thinking has changed with this practice. Both you and your life will be transformed by this renewal of your mind. Increase your awareness of others. When you are in company, observe their language, and the actions which bear out their statements. You'll be aware of their concepts by the results they bring upon themselves. Do not agree with what you hear when conversations turn negative. Think instead, I do not accept it, for myself or for them. You don't have to tell them about the truth you are learning. In fact, it's best not to, not because it is some secret ritual, but because they may not yet be ready for it. There is a proverb, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. People who are ready for advancement are automatically drawn to those who can lead them. It's a basic law of attraction, so there is no need for you to be a missionary. Trying to force the truth on people usually drives them in the other direction. This is what Jesus referred to when he said, "Give not that which is holy to dogs, neither cast ye pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn against you and rend you." Faith can move mountains. You've heard this proverb repeated again and again. But it is usually said thoughtlessly, since few people really know what it means, nor why or how faith can move mountains. Fear, too, can move mountains, for fear is merely a negative form of faith, faith in evil. It is the firm conviction that something bad is going to happen. Pure faith, on the other hand, is the certainty that whatever happens will be good. You don't fear that something good will happen to you. Nor do you say, "I have faith that something bad is coming." Faith is what we wish for. And you don't wish for harm to come to you, you fear it. But you attract what you fear, and so it comes about. And when it does happen, you may say, with a kind of perverse triumph, "I knew it. I could feel it." And so you did, but don't go around boasting of your clairvoyant skills. What happened was that you thought about this or that misfortune with fear. You did indeed predict it, with words and with emotions. And you have learned once again that whatever you think about with strong emotional intensity will come to pass. You fully expected it. And to expect, to anticipate, is to have faith, negative or positive. So, now that you know that everything you anticipate with faith will come to you, what's to stop you from using that knowledge, that faith, to answer your every wish? It is a natural law, a divine ordinance. Christ said so in these familiar words. "And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." Mark 21:22. St. Mark, too, stated specifically, "Whatsoever things you desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them." St. Paul expressed it more broadly, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." We have defined faith as the conviction of good. That conviction doesn't come out of thin air, it comes from knowledge, and that knowledge from experience. When you take a trip to a distant city, whether by air, train, or car, you're rarely afraid of missing a turn and ending up on the moon. Perhaps a Stone Age man, without benefit of the knowledge of maps or airline schedules, would be shaking with fear at the prospect, but you, with the knowledge of a civilized world at your disposal, know where you are going and when you are scheduled to arrive. This is faith, based on awareness, or knowledge. People fear evil, and do not know to apply faith, or even have the slightest notion of what faith is, because they lack knowledge of the principles of creation. Faith is conviction, certainty. But these must be based on specific knowledge. You know that a certain distant city exists. That people often go there, that you can get there, and that the moon is nowhere near your destination. This is positive faith. The converse is equally true. If you want something and fear that you won't get it, you won't. Simply because you denied yourself what you wanted in advance. Very likely, your prayer was designed more to prepare yourself for disappointment than for fulfillment. "Oh, Lord, grant me this, even though I know I don't deserve it, and I'll understand if you don't because you probably don't think it's right for me." That's negative prayer. And it works. Negatively. Now let's try the positive. There's a metaphysical formula for getting anything you want. Use it for everything. Don't believe it simply because I say it. Try it, let it work for you. Your faith, your belief must come with your own experience, your own knowledge. Your positive prayer. I wish for this. I wish it to be in harmony with the universe and according to God's will, His grace and His perfection. I thank you, Father, for I know you have heard me. You must not doubt for an instant. You have used a formula that some would call magic, which metaphysicians know is an application of universal principles. If you have fulfilled the law with complete belief, you will get your wish. But be patient. The more calmly you await fulfillment, the sooner you shall see results. Impatience, tension, and mental stress destroy the treatment, as it is called in metaphysics. Let me explain the importance of the wording in this formula. By saying, in harmony with the universe, you avoid the danger of bringing harm to another in fulfilling your wish, and make it impossible for you to wish harm to another. By saying, according to God's will, you acknowledge that God may see that what you specifically want may be less than perfect, or even harmful, for you, in which case He will substitute something even better than you had hoped for. In other words, you are asking God to make your wish as good as your intentions. The words, His grace and His perfection, contain the ultimate safeguards. Let me give you an example of what can happen if you do not seek God's grace and perfection. A lady was hard-pressed for a specific amount of money, and she asked for it in specific terms, for the 15th of the month. She firmly believed that she would be granted her wish, but her selfishness and indifference did not inspire her to ask in a way that would consider the welfare of others. The next day, her daughter was hit by a car and, precisely on the 15th of that month, she received the exact amount asked for, in the form of an insurance settlement for her daughter's accident. She used the formula incompletely, and thus worked against the law, against even her own self-interest. To ask for something in God's grace and perfection is to work with the spiritual law. The law of God is always on that perfect, spiritual level, where there are no obstacles or setbacks, no harm befalls anyone, no fights or struggles can take place. Here, all things run smoothly, tempered with great love. This is that great truth you are beginning to know, that will make you free. I thank you, Father, for I know you have heard me, is the ultimate expression of faith which we can pronounce. Jesus taught and applied that faith when He broke the bread that fed 5,000 people, or changed water into wine at the wedding feast. We celebrate that faith by saying grace before a meal. We thank God for His graciousness before we experience its manifestation. As you read on, you will begin to see that everything Christ taught was metaphysical. Everything you wish for or need is waiting for you, waiting to manifest itself in response to your wish or prayer. God has already provided everything, and we have only to ask for these blessings as the need arises. All we have to remember is that we must never ask that any harm befalls another person, because that harm, or its backlash, will fall upon us. And whatever we ask for ourselves must be asked for all mankind, in the name of harmony, for we are all children of the same Father. And He is a generous Father. Therefore, pray for abundance. Don't say, "Oh, Lord, please give me a place to live, just a small apartment, that's all I ask," when your large family needs a large house. God's resources are as boundless as His generosity. If you ask for little, little is all you'll receive. Ask instead, "Oh, Lord, give me and all mankind the wonders of your kingdom." And make a list. The spiritual muscle of faith needs as much exercise as your arms and legs. Practice. Make that list of things you want. Make another list of things your life would be better without, from flaws in your character to adverse circumstances that surround you. Read the list every night, with the formula above, feeling no doubt, and give thanks each time you think about or speak aloud your wishes. As your wishes come true, cross them off your list. And, once they have all been granted, don't be so ungrateful as to think that they'd probably have come true anyway. It's simply not true. They were granted because you asked for them in the right way, in good faith, and external aspects were adjusted so that they could happen in a natural way. Just as we strengthen our positive faith, we must work to weaken that negative faith, the faith in evil, which is fear. Sadly, we are all accustomed to fear, for a wide variety of reasons. But the following formula, repeated daily or more often, will wear away that reflex you have embedded in your subconscious. I am not afraid. I will not fear. I have faith that God is love and that there is nothing to fear in all of His creation. I will feel only that faith. When Roosevelt said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself," he was voicing a great truth. A truth which you should say to yourself, even when you are shaking with fear, especially then. Once you realize that fear is the great enemy, and not the conditions which make you feel it, you have begun to triumph over that fear. Your verbal wish to dissolve fear and replace it with faith is enough to place you on the positive pole of faith. You've probably heard about the psychological principle that says the most effective way to break a bad habit is to replace it with a good one. It is a metaphysical principle as well. Once you have begun the treatment of wearing away a deeply implanted reflex, you must fill that blank space with a new and opposite idea. Otherwise, that empty space will attract reflexes of the same kind that filled it before, for those reflexes are floating around everywhere, in conversation, in the attitudes of others, looking for fertile ground. Replacing fear with faith denies those negative thought spaces in the subconscious. The constant repetition of your formula is necessary. Remember, it took years for those negative ideas to form, so you must be willing to spend a few minutes a day erasing them. And gradually, you will see things begin to happen just as you positively expect them to happen. Jesus said, "By their fruits, ye shall know them." One meaning of this is that positive events are reflections of a positive faith. This powerful tool, the power to decree, is an ancient one, first mentioned in the first 2 chapters of Genesis. I suggest you take a little time to read them now. As you read, you'll realize that man was not created to be a pawn in a game of circumstances, a victim of situations, or some puppet dancing on strings held by powers beyond his control. Quite the opposite, man was placed at the zenith of creation, rather than being, as some suppose, one of the least significant beings in creation. Man was given God's highest authority over earth and its creatures, and the wisdom, if he will use it, to rule his planet in perfection. We are created in God's image, and have been given his powers, including the power of decree. And we have been given free will, the freedom to choose between the perfection that comes with perfect faith and the disharmony that is fear. Man is the means by which the wisdom, love, and power of the Creator can be fully expressed. We have been placed, with all our concerns, in a universe which is obedient to God's will, and has no other alternative than to carry out the decrees of His supreme authority. Still, the authority God has given us is total, and our power to decree is absolute. And, though the basic nature of the universe is perfect in the Creator's eyes, it will appear to man only as man decrees it. The story of the Garden of Eden tells us that man lived in a universe of perfect order, maintaining his powers to think and decree in absolute harmony, until he ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. From that point on, the concept that there was an opposite to perfection, and that evil could happen, has plagued mankind. His choices, what he could decree for himself, now included unhappiness in its countless forms. His power had become potentially self-defeating. But it is still within our power to restore the harmony of our own lives, to recreate our own Eden. Love. This chapter will complete your introduction to the first principle of creation. This is the principle of mentalism, and it can be summed up as, the mind is all. Jesus said, "Ye are gods." John 10:34. He meant that the creative capacity of God is within every one of us. Thus, with our thoughts alone, we can create or recreate all that we see in our environment, just as the whole of creation was brought into being by a thought. You have already been introduced to the mechanics of this mental creation, the negative or positive character of that which has been created, the force required to determine its nature, the way to change the external aspects of that which you have created by denial or affirmation, the power of the spoken thought as a confirmation of attitude, and finally, the infallible formula for creating and establishing the best possible personal universe for yourself. You are capable of bringing about harmony in your life by following Jesus' advice to know the truth. And you have discovered that the truth is that the universe was created in perfection by a perfect being, and that evil has no power when confronted with this truth, because evil is not God's creation, and it must disappear when the truth of faith in perfection is substituted for the thoughts that brought it about. Jesus admonished us, resist not evil, not because evil is so powerful, but because it is powerless in the face of truth, the good, which is the natural state of things. From now on, you won't have to cast about for someone to blame for your troubles. You merely have to look within and ask, what was my mental attitude about this situation? Was it positive or negative? Did I have faith or was I afraid? What kind of decrees did I make with my words? By their fruits, ye shall know them. Simply be honest with yourself and you will see how you controlled things. If you like what you see, fine. If not, you have within you the power to change your circumstances. In Christian metaphysics, we believe God to be 7 aspects: love, truth, life, intelligence, soul, spirit, and principle. These are all abstract concepts. We cannot see, feel, or hear them, but we can feel and recognize their effects. They exist, act and produce results, and not one of them can be denied. Love is the first aspect of God, the most powerful facet of His character, and it is the strongest and most sensitive of all forces. But very few of us know what love really is. Most of us think of it as being what we feel for parents, children, spouses, lovers, and so forth. Affection, tenderness, sexual attraction, dislike and hate are all different degrees of sensation, and these sensations only skirt the border of love in its purest sense. Let us try to focus in on the heart of it by examining the sensations we are familiar with. On this scale, the central, or neutral points are what we call tolerance and goodwill, with love at one extreme and hate and loathing at the other. This may seem to be unbalanced, since we consider goodwill a positive or loving kind of feeling, but if you think about it, you will see that tolerance and goodwill disappear when we love too much, for these feelings must apply to all, not simply to the object of our exaggerated affections. And, of course, there is no tolerance or goodwill to be found in hatred, for this is the antithesis of love and the absence of goodwill. Jesus said, "Peace be unto those of goodwill," which implies that peace is goodwill, and that the extremes are departure from peace. Peace is at the center, it is the fulcrum of that perfect balance. All excesses unbalanced that scale away from this center, away from peace. Even the excess of good things, money, love, prayer, charity, sacrifice. This is what is meant by the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in Genesis. The forbidden fruit is not so much knowledge as it is excess. God Himself only mentions the terms bad or evil in reference to excess. And in this connection, now would be a good time to pause and read the chapter in Ecclesiastes which begins, "There is a time for everything." Too much love? How can that be? But you already know the answer if you've ever seen a mother love her children so much that she never allows them to leave their nests, get married or live any kind of independent life. This is not love but a selfish desire to possess. The same is true of jealousy. These are not aspects of love but aspects of excess and an unbalancing of scale, for there is little peace in such relationship, no room for tolerance and goodwill. Shakespeare understood, speaking of music as the food of love, he said, "Give me the excess of it, that, surfeiting, the appetite may sicken and so die." Too much love destroys love. Generally, an excess of feeling is balanced by a corresponding lack of intelligence, another of the aspects of God. This, of course, will create indignation among people who consider themselves sensitive. But there is a great difference between sensitivity, which is a form of awareness, and sentimentality, which is allowing one's intelligence to be outweighed by unthinking emotions. Again, it's a matter of balances. If emotion is hot, then intelligence is cold, but peace is neither a polar blizzard or the blistering heat of the Saharan sun. It is a comfortably warm spring day, a temperate blend of climates. Now, having a great emotional capacity is desirable, if it is balanced by an equal capacity for intelligent thought. This is what makes great artists. Their work is the vessel into which they intelligently pour their emotional potential. But the excessively emotive person pours that passion onto those who surround him or her, and the effect is not love but smothering. If you can recognize this quality in yourself, you have the honesty to correct it. And the method is meditation. Concentrate on the idea of intelligence. Do it daily, for as long as you can. The more time you invest, the better. Begin by asking yourself what intelligence is. Define it in yourself, in man. Then go on to consider that everything, plants and animals included, has intelligence. Intelligence, remember, is a sense of awareness, of knowledge. Finalize this by affirming, "I have been created from the essence of God, by and from His intelligence, I share the intelligence of God." A few days of this repeated treatment will produce a noticeable increase in your mental elasticity, and in a week you will experience a transformation in the way you feel love for others. There will be a new serenity and generosity which you may never have thought possible. At the same time, you'll notice a change in the way others treat you. We may be all individuals, but what changes one, affects others, all others, in varying degrees. This upward step you take affects all of humanity, starting with those you love most, including yourself. Now let's deal with humanity's number one enemy, resentment and ill-feeling. The generalized feelings which find their culmination in hate. Not one of us is totally free of resentment, yet it can embitter our whole life. It has a bad influence on every event or relationship, and it is the cause of every disappointment we suffer, even though we have learned to know the truth, and to deny or affirm, and keep a watch over and correct our thoughts and words. Just one resentment, one ill feeling engraved on the subconscious and the soul is a small fountain of bile, tainting and embittering, going against all of our fondest wishes. Nothing, not even the most perfect situation, can endure as long as this emotional pollution exists to poison our every attitude. Religions and holy books are endlessly telling us that we must treat our enemies with forgiveness, for our own sakes, not for theirs. But they do not tell us how. The result is that people play with words. I can forgive, but I can't forget. But the two are inseparable. If one has not forgotten, one has not truly forgiven, and what memories remain beget resentment. Fortunately, there is an infallible formula that lets you forgive and forget at the same time, so you can achieve that balance that puts peace and goodwill at the center of your life. The formula is an effort of love. Saint John, often called the Apostle of Love, repeats the words of the Lord. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love. Love is the fulfillment of the law. It has been said, the man who loves well is the most powerful man in the world. For that man is of and with God, happy and satisfied with his world. Again, the formula is simple. Whenever you feel ill will towards someone or feel resentment over something that has been done to you, whenever you recognize open hostility on your part or a desire to take revenge, then you must force yourself to deliberately recall all the good about the person involved, not forgetting what has just occurred to arouse your resentment. Try to relive good times spent in his or her company, the times before resentment set in. Think only of good times, the good qualities about this person. Recall a humorous situation and try to laugh again with the recollection. Once you have achieved this, the miracle has begun. One treatment may not be enough to erase the resentment, but all that's required is repetition, as many times as necessary, and you'll feel the resentment weaken its hold and wash away. This is the real meaning of, resist ye not evil, the true way of, turning the other cheek. It is loving one's enemy, blessing those who curse us and praying for those who say evil things about us. By wrapping up bad memories in good ones, we have smothered them into forgettability. Once we have forgotten the feeling of resentment, forgetting the cause of it is automatic. If you do this in all sincerity, you will soon discover a new feeling of freedom. Little things will stop bothering you, and soon, those little annoyances will even stop happening. Your life will begin to run smoothly. Best of all, you will have the goodwill of those around you, even those who may not have liked you before. By creating it within yourself, you have created the same peaceful balance in others. Denials and affirmations. Confronting an illness in yourself or another. I deny the appearance of all physical affliction. I do not accept it for myself or anyone else. The only truth lies within my soul, and all sickness flees like a lie before the truth of my words. I have faith that life is health, strength, and joy, and we are all expressions of life. I thank thee, Father, for I know you have heard me. Confronting any fear of your own or of another. I deny fear. Since God did not create fear, it can have no existence except that which I allow it. I reject this appearance which I have created. I let go and banish every shadow of fear within myself or within you. Saint John said, love dispels all fear. God is love. I am his child, made of and by his love. Thus I dispel fear. I thank thee, Father, for I know you have heard me. Confronting any sorrow of your own or of another, I deny the very existence of this sorrow, grief or depression, since it does not come from God. I have no use for negative feelings, I do not accept them, I erase them. God is happiness, pleasure and joy, and, therefore, I am all of these as well. I thank thee, Father, for I know you have heard me. And I thank thee for these joys. List all those good things in your life which bring you joy. Confronting failure or lack. I deny the appearance of any lack in myself or my circumstances. I know that only God's abundance is the truth. I deny failure, for only success and happiness are of God. My world contains everything, and what I desire will come to me, in God's perfection. I know you will show me the way, Lord. I thank thee, Father, for I know you have heard me. Confronting any situation of conflict. I deny all that which is inharmonious, I do not accept this or any conflict. God is perfect harmony, and there can be no conflict, setback or struggle or any state which opposes the fulfillment of His harmony. I know that the appearance of conflict will vanish. I thank Thee, Father, for I know You have heard me. Confronting all that is in conflict with the peace of the world, I deny any appearance which is contrary to goodwill, which is the peace of the world. I thank Thee for the truth of Thy eternal peace. These events are the creations of those who ignore Thy truth, and they are of no importance. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Peace is Thy will, and Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I thank Thee, Father, for I know You have heard me. I have offered these prayers for You to use as guidelines in creating Your own messages or decrees, Your own formulas. Remember that we are constantly thinking and expressing attitudes, making decrees, almost every moment of our lives. In other words, we are constantly at prayer. The vital thing to remember is to keep these constant prayers positive. This is the only way to achieve a positive life. It is important to keep within the spirit of the prayer. The effect of a prayer is destroyed if, after affirming, you let yourself slide back to the negative pole. Be in control of your thoughts and words. Do not let diluting or negating thoughts weaken your prayer. Ignore what others say. Remember, they do not know what you are learning. Never forget that wishing good for one is wishing good for all. What you wish for others will come back to you, and what you wish for yourself, you should also wish for others. Your wishes are more valuable than charitable donations, for these last only for the moment, while truth remains forever. Wish for all to come to know the truth. Your wish and the wishes of the millions who have read and will read this book and its companions will enter into the hearts of others, and you will have granted the spiritual gift of knowledge to others. The principle of rhythm, like the pendulum or boomerang, returns like to like. Hani soit kamal y pense means evil to him who evil thinks. But only good can come to one whose thoughts are good. It has been said that God plus one is a majority. This means that one person alone who raises his consciousness to the spiritual plane, using the metaphysical truth of God, can save an organization from ruin, a community, a city, or a nation from crisis. This truth dominates all the planes of existence. And the truth shall make you free. Chapter 2: The Metaphysical Meaning of the Ten Commandments. To this day, it is still unknown whether Moses was who the Bible says he was or was actually the son of the sister of Pharaoh Ramses II. His name, an Egyptian name, means taken from the waters, and since the Bible is rich in symbolic stories, so written to make sure that the truths these stories are meant to bring us would not be lost in a multitude of translations, the biblical account of Moses being born a Jew and adopted by the princess could also be more symbolic than historical. The point is, the truth of his origin has no effect on his teachings. Moses was an enlightened man, a great master of metaphysical truth, who not only freed the Jews from slavery and the subhuman conditions in which they were living, but also spread his teachings to the nomadic bands who joined the tribes of Israel in the desert. This is one reason why the many peoples of the Middle East today are almost entirely monotheistic. Among these different races, some were more primitive than others. These had no respect for the property of others, who killed those who obstructed them, who allowed the old to die of hunger, since they had outlived their usefulness, and who considered women no more than communal property. The more civilized Israelites, however, had tasted the lash of slavery and were more inclined to a better treatment of their fellow men, despite the fact that they had fallen in with the idolatrous ways of the Egyptians and varied desert cultures, forgetting the one God of their fathers. This forced Moses to codify their forgotten standards into a simple set of laws that could be understood by all. He decreed harsh punishments for disobedience of these divine laws, believing this the only way to tame the beast within. Moses had been educated at the temple at Heliopolis, one of the world's great centers of learning at that time, where he learned mathematics, metaphysics, astrology, numerology, the meaning of numbers, and a triple symbolism which was used in those days to record knowledge for future generations as they evolved. This symbology provides insight into Moses' thinking and into the meaning of the commandments. The first aspect was the simplest, dealing with the everyday life and world of the human being. The second aspect was metaphysical, and dealt with the same conditions as the first, on a more abstract mental level. The last, most profound aspect was hieroglyphical and dealt with human life in a metaphysical sense. This last aspect was said to be so profound that it could only be understood by one whose soul was absolutely pure. All aspects were encompassed by the principle of correspondence, which states, "As it is above, so it is below, as it is below, so it is above." Below and above refer to the physical and spiritual planes, the world of everyday existence and the abstract mental and spiritual world of the soul. What the statement means is simply that all laws act on all levels, and that conditions on one level have their counterparts on the level below and the level above. The importance of these echoes or correspondences will become clearer as we go on. Moses meant the 10 Commandments, or Sefer Bereshit, as the laws are called in Hebrew, to be understood and obeyed on all levels, so that man would not only be guided but educated and awakened by them. The interpretations that follow are as old as the commandments themselves, based on the same symbology Moses learned at Heliopolis and passed on to us by those scholars who have kept this methodology alive through the centuries. And man, for the most part, obeys these laws on the first level. There are many who complain about the contradictions between dogma and common sense, people who accept the rightness of the commandments but are searching for a higher understanding of things, including the laws we live by. That higher understanding is what this ancient interpretation provides. Let us sum up the 10 Commandments on their literal level. 1. There is but one God, thou shalt not worship any other. 2. Thou shalt not make or worship false images. 3. Thou shalt not take the name of God in vain. 4. Thou shalt keep the Sabbath day holy. 5. Thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother. 6. Thou shalt not kill. 7. Thou shalt not commit adultery. 8. Thou shalt not steal. 9. Thou shalt not bear false witness. 10. Thou shalt not covet. These laws are of 2 kinds. 8 of them as prohibitions, having the words, thou shalt not. Only numbers 4 and 5 stand out as recommendations. Taken at the literal level, the 8 are apparently rules of behavior, outlawing antisocial acts. And to the less civilized societies of those days, such literal prohibitions were necessary. It was not an easy world. People thought in terms of survival, and gave little thought to behavior that did not contribute to that basic need. One did not kill a member of his family or his tribe because it would be killing one of his protectors, and he would be banished into the desert at the least. But when it came to outsiders, the rules were different. An obnoxious Philistine was fair game. It took this codification to declare that killing any fellow human was against God's law. And civilized behavior had to be taught on a legal habitual basis. Even in those times of relative primitiveness and ignorance, the average person was rarely moved to break the laws. Then as now, it was the minority who ignored the rules. The great majority find the commandments to be natural extensions of the common sense, golden rule. There is still murder, theft, lying and covetousness in the world, true, but these are the act of the minority, those who do not realize that there is indeed a higher law that punishes those who do not live by the rules that protect the rest of society. But most of humanity is ready to look at the commandments we take for granted in a new light, from the vantage point of the second aspect of the three-part symbolism of Moses. The commandments are clear on the literal or physical level. Let's look at them from a purely mental viewpoint. The hieroglyphic or spiritual level is beyond our understanding today, and will remain so until we reach that total purity of soul that permits total enlightenment. Let's examine Commandments 6, 8, 9, and 10, against killing, stealing, bearing false witness and covetousness. At first glance, these are on the same level as, "Thou shalt not walk on the grass," although they carry more stringent penalties. These are actions prohibited by authorities, implying that you may choose to disobey, but you'll regret the decision. But there is a difference, on the mental level. It's the difference between shall and will. Most languages make a distinction between these verbs. Shall is simply future tense. Will is just that, an act of will. I shall do it means, it is going to be done by me. I will do it means, I choose to do it. The same is true of, thou shalt not. It doesn't mean, you must not, it means, categorically, this is not going to be done by you. It has been said that the meaning carried by these commandments is equivalent to saying, thou shalt not fly to the moon by flapping thine arms. The thought is laughable, even to those who aren't aware of the laws of physics and biology that make the effort an impossibility. But, you might say, that's a statement of fact, not a commandment. And in saying this, you'll have come to the heart of the matter. Because, on the mental level, a commandment is a statement of fact. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill means that you cannot kill. The material body has no will of its own. It can't oppose or impose anything. Life lies within the soul, the spirit, the higher self. And when this life leaves its temporary vehicle of flesh and bones, what remains is, indeed, a lifeless body. The person with the knife, the gun, the pinch of cyanide has not taken a life, he has merely caused it to move to the next plane of existence, as conscious as ever. And instead of having removed someone who is an obstacle or threat from his life, he has created an even greater one. The law of rhythm is in operation, and the murderer has brought his own death closer. Perhaps it will be an accident, a debilitating disease or death at the hands of another. It has happened so often that clichés cover the situation. He who lives by the sword, dies by the sword. It is not God who punishes, but the inexorable order of his law. His principle rules over the universe on every plane, both to repay good and to exact the cost of evil. Order is the first rule in heaven. And every deed is subject to that order, for every human being, every life is recorded, ye are counted, unto the last hair upon thy head. Now you can see why we say that no harm comes to you from any outside force. No one can hurt you unless there is a record of your having done something similar to someone else. No one can ruin your reputation, your business, your happiness, your home or any of your belongings, nor can you do damage to those of another. There is no such thing as an accident, nothing happens by pure chance. The great laws protect you. The vast majority of people feel incapable of killing or bringing harm to another human being. It is against the commandments, it is against society's laws, it is against the moral grain of most individuals. This is our first line of defense. The second line is the second aspect of the commandments, which tells us that it is impossible to truly accomplish these wrongs, and that our attempts will only bring back the same evil upon us. The boomerang returns to the hurler. Thou shalt not kill is not a limited admonishment, referring only to human beings, any more than it refers to only one tribe or group of human beings. No life is to be dismissed as insignificant. Yet there are times when an animal must be killed for the greater good that will result. Even if we adopt the karmic philosophy and accept the possibility that every living creature, down to the microscopic level, has a spirit capable of evolving through incarnation into the most superior of men, we must adopt a common-sense attitude. Common sense is one way by which divine wisdom manifests itself in a human being. This is a fact well worth repeating and memorizing. Say it to yourself whenever you are faced with a doubtful situation. When thinking of life as the precious thing it is, it becomes impossible to draw a line. Is the kitten or puppy, virtually adopted as a member of the family, more deserving of life than the verminous, disease-bearing rat? Both are highly intelligent animals, equals on the evolutionary scale. What about the venomous serpent, the loathsome cockroach, the infection-producing staphylococcus? All are life. The same is true of the vegetable kingdom, from the flowers we casually sever from their roots to decorate our homes, to the mold that decorates a forgotten crust of bread. These reproduce their kind, grow and respond to stimuli, even music. These are life. In giving us freedom of choice, God has made us judges over His lesser creatures. And we have made judgments. Society has laws against the indiscriminate killing of domesticated animals and endangered species. At the same time, society licenses exterminators and stockyard slaughterhouses. We domesticate bees and fumigate wasps. We cultivate the yeasts that produce fine wines and slaughter disease-producing bacteria by the billions. Common sense has given rise to these laws, and common sense is what we must use on the individual level as well. Let's take a seemingly absurd example. A cockroach scuttles across the floor of your spotless kitchen. Your first instinct is to crush it under your heel, or reach for the raid. You know that where you see one, there are dozens, perhaps hundreds more. They are a threat to health and cleanliness, and the thought of one crawling on your arm makes your skin do the crawling. Yet the cockroach is one of the most ancient forms of life on Earth today, having arrived millions upon millions of years before man, even before the dinosaurs. If longevity is the only guideline, they have more right to be here than we do. But intelligence outweighs longevity. However, intelligence carries with it responsibility. The words of Genesis 1:26 give us the clue, "Let us make man in our own image, after our likeness. Let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air and the beasts of the field, and over all wild beasts and over the creatures that crawl upon the ground." And thus God created man in His image, in the divine image created He him. Note that the reference to God's image is repeated 3 times. This triple repetition appears often in the Bible, and its intention is to emphasize that a statement is valid on the physical, mental, and spiritual levels. In other words, no further metaphysical explanation should be sought. The truth is before you, eternal and unchanging. Dominion is the power of judgment. Even the cockroach should be accorded conscious judgment. Millions of people believe that even the lowest creatures have souls, or are a part of a greater group soul, and the hive behavior of ants and bees seems to lend evidence to the possibility. Air activities certainly seem to be governed by a well-ordered group consciousness. Compare the activities of ants building a nest, the various groups going about their appointed functions with no apparent communications, with the same activities as at a modern construction site. If contracts were awarded on dogged efficiency alone, we'd have ants building our condominiums. We might compare the functions of the various ant groups to those of various parts of the body: hands, eyes, feet, ears, and so forth, all governed by the brain, sent through lines of communication called nerves. Perhaps there is a single intelligence guiding them all. And perhaps that intelligence occupies an equally significant place in the universe as your own. Perhaps it will, in future incarnations, achieve singular intelligence. Hundreds of millions of people believe just that, and I do not consider myself wise enough to scoff at them. Your approach to the cockroach? Try this, think strongly, or even say aloud, there is one cell of this intelligence that is creating disharmony in my environment. I ask the intelligence to remove it and restore harmony. A surprising number of people who have tried this have said that the roach, spider, lizard, or whatever, has literally stopped in its tracks and then changed direction to disappear, never to return. As always, belief in the truth of harmony must underlie your words. If the creature appears a second time, or others appear, repeat your words, adding, "Take this cell away or I may be forced to kill it." If this does not work, for any number of reasons, perhaps the creature actually seeks its own death as translation to a higher order, then you must kill it swiftly, painlessly, and with no emotion other than goodwill. May you evolve into a higher species. Your well-meaning thought and intention protect you from the consequences of your action. Many religious groups forbid their followers to eat meat, believing that the vibrations of agony from the animal being killed contaminate the human soul and degrade his physical being as well. Jesus did not agree, saying, "Not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth a man, for out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh." And Moses said, "Not anyone nor anything can harm us from without, unless we deserve it, unless we accept and believe that it is possible." We have already discussed this truth, and once we know it and remember it, nothing can truly harm us. We have not yet reached the point where we can sustain our bodies without taking in food, and the taste for meat, the need for its nutritional components only reflect our status as an omnivorous animal. Limiting ourselves to a vegetarian diet may not be unhealthy, but it's certainly no sign of spiritual elevation. Cattle are at the pinnacle of evolution for strict vegetarians. Put more simply, it takes more intelligence to hunt than to graze. And that intelligence is more cleansing than dietary restriction. The higher studies, such as metaphysics, help us to live in a more mental spiritual world. The power of the mind can cleanse the cells of the body. The principle of correspondence tells us, as it is above, so it is below, as it is below, so it is above. Your mind unconsciously tells you what foods are best for you. And the time may well come when you find yourself eating less meat, or even find it distasteful to the point where you give it up voluntarily. This is all well and good. You have settled on a diet that will produce the best nutritional balance for your body's requirements, naturally, rather than by someone else's arbitrary decree. When you study the principle of vibration, you will discover that it is indeed possible for a vibration of lower frequency to influence that of a greater one, as in the case of vibrations from killed animals, if the person is unaware of the principle of vibration, and believes that he can be so influenced. By his belief, he subjects himself to a law lower than himself, as Moses stated above. These are only a few thoughts about the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," because you cannot kill. Life is positive, indestructible, and eternal. Death is negative, an attempt to deny life. But it is no more than an attempt, for life is undeniable. Thou shalt not steal. From reading the previous chapter, you already know the second or superior aspect of this commandment: you cannot steal. So there's no point in even thinking about it, much less trying. It simply can't be done. No one can rob you of that which belongs to you. They may try to, they may even manage to pick your pocket or burglarize your home. And, as long as you remain ignorant of the law and believe you can be robbed, the missing possessions will be lost to you. But once you familiarize yourself with the law, repeat and remember its truth, in one way or another your possessions will return to you, and no one will ever rob you again. In fact, you will never again, as long as you remain conscious of the law, lose or misplace anything. You can prove it to yourself. The next time you cannot find something and consider it lost forever, repeat the law to yourself, and search again in this new light. You will find that you've thought of a new place to look, or you will search where you have already looked and find it, or you will remember circumstances under which you parted with it. This is one of the easiest lessons to learn. Let's examine why nothing can be stolen. Your body contains within itself all of the elemental substances of our planet, whether we refer to these fundamentally as earth, air, fire and water, or the atomic elements from argon to zirconium. Furthermore, you are the sum of all the experience and knowledge of your chemical ancestry, from that first single-celled creature to the billions of specialized cells that make up your body today. On the cellular level, you have deeply buried memories of that first blind groping for food, the first struggle to take oxygen from air instead of water, those first steps as a thinking, planning biped. These memories are an inseparable part of you, far below the level of conscious recall, just as every cell in your body contains the genetic information needed to create an exact duplicate of your entire body, and none of this experience or information can ever be lost. And because this experience, this information is cumulative and unforgettable, you can truly never be diminished. Your spiritual evolution can never go backward, only forward. The principle of polarity tells us that like attracts like and opposites repel, thus we are attracted toward what we are growing to be and pushed on by what we have outgrown. Thus, with the start of every new life, learning the basics becomes easier and easier, because we are not learning so much as remembering. By the time a child is born, he has already recapitulated his evolutionary history in the womb, first as a single cell, and on through a water-breathing then an air-breathing stage, until the final development of the complex cerebral cortex of the brain makes him ready to emerge as a human being. The child has already learned the primitive reflexes of hunger, discomfort, responses to sights and sounds. And many children, from their past experience, show remarkable abilities in certain areas: mathematics, mechanics, athletic coordination, reading, the arts, among others. The intelligent child, bored in the classroom, is simply frustrated at the time he must waste in relearning. Though he may never seem to study, exams and conversation will prove that the learning is indeed there. There is a multitude of evidence that reincarnation exists, but it's not mandatory. Free will exists for and in every creature. And just as people here on earth may either take advantage of an opportunity or pass it by, souls existing on the astral plane are free to return to earth, in order to continue their individual evolution, to acquire new experiences, repay old debts or reap the rewards of a good life, or to remain in the untroubled stasis of the higher plane. There is no authority to force a soul to return, only the individual desire to improve one's karma, which can only be achieved in the active, bustling physical world of changes. Knowledge and experience are acquisitions which have been bought and paid for, acquired, by right of consciousness, which can neither be lost nor stolen, any more than any native ability or talent can be taken from you. Surprisingly, the same is true of material possessions, for they are the accompaniments of your earned abilities and deeds. Physical objects are earthly parallels of mental and spiritual gains, everything one has learned to use and enjoy, from the comforts of a palatial home to the utility of a simple book of matches, from jewelry to cutlery, remain ours in essence from incarnation to incarnation. So it may be said that those who are born wealthy have earned that wealth already, but it is still up to them to maintain that wealth, if they wish to keep it. Or they may lose it, perhaps as a means of improving their karma. As Jesus said, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust do corrupt and where thieves break through and steal, but rather lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust do corrupt and no thieves break through and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart also be." Matthew 6:19-21. Like all the proverbs of the Bible, this is significant on the material, mental and spiritual levels. By now you understand that there is no need to live in fear of thieves. If you live in constant worry of robbery, being overcharged or embezzled from, you can now live in peace. And should something be taken from you, simply say to yourself the truth. Nothing that is mine by right of consciousness can be lost or stolen from me. Then forget the loss and be patient. Soon someone will return the item to you, you will receive a gift to replace it, or something of equal or greater value will come to you. What is earned cannot be taken from you. Thou shalt not steal, because you cannot. And neither can anyone else. But don't take my word for it. Use the thoughts and the treatments in this chapter to prove it to yourself. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Many people wonder why there is no specific commandment against lying, and then the 9th commandment covers the situation. In fact, all wrongdoing is a fundamental lie in that it contravenes the truth of harmony, and lies are covered more specifically in the first 3 commandments, as we shall see later. The whole of the commandments is an exposition of truth and a warning against every pretense and falsehood that mankind is heir to. But, perhaps because of this lack of specific admonishment against lying in everyday life, man continues to distort the truth at his convenience. The commandment refers to the spoken or written word, that which bears the lie. The lie cannot truly exist, because there is only truth on all planes, and because the law will return the appearance of the lie to you, to your detriment. Election time, sad to say, is a prime example of human capacity for bearing false witness. We see parties and individuals publicizing statements of untruth and innuendo, and after the dust has settled, the winner begins his tenure secure in the belief that he has been recognized as the better man, whatever the truth or falsehood of his campaign claims. But he will be recognized by his actions, not his words, by his fruits. Emerson said it well, "What you are shout so loudly that I cannot hear what you have to say." The commandment says that what you see is your own conception of things. If you see beauty, it is a reflection of the beauty, the truth within you. And if you see only ugliness, your words will reflect the falsehood within you, and you deny the reality that is truth. And when you bear false witness, it is only testimony against yourself. We have learned that the true self is perfect, having all the beauty of its creator, since it was created by, with, and from the essence of God. And this self, this being, is an expression of truth, yours and that of everyone else, and when we display an attitude of ugliness, of falsehood, we display only ignorance of our own creative power, which is thought, or the recognition that ugliness cannot exist, lies cannot exist in the face of the truth, which is all. Those who lie are not evil, they are but children who have yet to learn to recognize truth. When you give a small child modeling clay or crayons, you don't expect him to start churning out works that will rival those of Michelangelo, at least not for the first few weeks. You do expect a gradual learning process, as he gains the experience of discovering the limitations of his materials and his abilities, to learn by his mistakes and achievements, past and present. And he must learn to create what he sees. This is true of all of us. And if we want to change what we see, we must change our way of thinking about what we see. Thus, you know that by recognizing falsehood for what it is, you project and establish truth not only in your own eyes but in those of others. By thinking and declaring the truth, lies and misunderstandings begin to disappear. Truth is life and a lie is a hopeless attempt to negate truth. A lie has no life of its own and can only exist by virtue of the power you give it. And truth is your source of power. Your being or self is as perfect as everything else created by God. It is only the appearance of ugliness, wickedness, flaws and imperfections that you create for yourself. But since these are but illusions, you have only to deny them strongly, stating the truth of your perfect essence, and the false testimony of your imperfection will begin to change for you and for all around you. The truth has not changed, you have merely learned to recognize it, and have shown others your truth by your example. Truth can no more be changed than God can be offended. We occasionally hear of man's actions being an offense to God. God cannot be offended or hurt by man. And nothing can mar or weaken a principle. Can a fish change the currents of the sea? Thou shalt not covet. When an idea, a creation springs forth from the divine mind, it already contains everything necessary for its complete development. It's inconceivable that God would send us an incomplete idea, and allow us to frustrate ourselves trying to complete the puzzle. God is infinite wisdom, love and justice. He does not tease his children. The universe is based on logic and order. The perfect harmony that exists in all its parts can be seen wherever we look, from the paths of the planets to the masterful engineering of an ant colony. Once this knowledge is acquired, we realize that nothing which is necessary is missing from our lives. When we have more than we need or want for our own happiness, it is there for the happiness of others. Science says that nature abhors a vacuum, and this is demonstrably true. Even so-called empty space is crowded with dust motes and hydrogen clouds and random molecules drifting in their paths toward becoming something else. Life is constantly searching for something to animate. This is its purpose. A small pot of earth left in any moist environment will soon host a stray seed and sprout forth. A forgotten glass of water will soon be swimming with larvae. Before a child is conceived, the womb is prepared to receive, nurture and protect the seed until it develops into a complete human being. The same is true of the eggs of birds, reptiles and insects, the seeds and spores of plant life. All contain the needs for the development of the complete creature. With man, completeness is fulfillment, and God has provided the seeds for this in every man. Therefore, a man can lack for nothing, everything has been foreseen, and has been made available. And God completed the package by telling us, thou shalt not covet. In other words, that we have no need to envy or desire the possessions or good fortunes of another. Because we have but to ask for the things we want for ourselves. They are already ours. It is written in the Bible, ask and it shall be given unto you, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. These are not idle words, they were meant to be taken seriously and literally. Note that the idea was expressed 3 times. The size of your desire, the scope of your dreams in general, is a measure of your need, and an indication of how close that need is to being fulfilled. Ask for what you want, and give thanks to God in the same breath. Do so without doubt, and you shall receive. Your wish may come true through natural occurrences, through the generosity of a friend or as a miracle. I remember an occasion when I was in New Orleans without a penny to my name. A transfer of funds had been late and it was a Saturday afternoon and the bank wouldn't be open until Monday, and I knew no one in the city. However, I knew the truth and declared it, standing on the sidewalk, my world contains everything, there is nothing missing in creation. Father, I thank thee, for I know thou hast heard me. At that very moment, a green piece of paper was borne on the wind towards me and wrapped itself around my ankle. Knowing someone must have dropped it, I waited with that $5 bill in my hand to see if anyone was looking for it. No one was in sight. It was meant to be mine. It lasted me until Monday, with enough left over for a taxi ride to the bank, where my money was waiting. A miracle? Or a happy coincidence? I wonder if there's a difference. Miracles don't occur because a principle has been violated, as many churches once believed, but by the proper action of that principle. We are applying that principle by asking it to work in our behalf. A principle cannot be altered. As one of my teachers said, if the law of gravity were suspended to prevent a man from falling from a building, it wouldn't be a miracle, it would be chaos. If you look, you'll find that logical explanation behind every miracle. But what happens is still just as miraculous. The first commandment. The first 3 commandments may be viewed as one, since they all refer to the nature of God. And, in fact, there is a difference of opinion between branches of Christianity as to whether these are 3 or 4 separate commandments. I have written them as one. The numbers here refer only to the text that follows. 1. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. 2. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. 3. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I the Lord thy God am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto the thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. 4. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. In this commandment, the phrase the Lord thy God appears 3 times, signifying that it is to be taken literally on the material, mental and spiritual levels. He is the creator of all things. He is the supreme law or principle. He is that which dwells within us, the higher self, that is one with God the Creator and God the principle. These are 3 literal aspects of the one God. Egypt is the symbol of earthly things, of the primitive man who has yet to reach the concept of a single, all-powerful and invisible God. The Egyptians worshipped many gods and bowed down before many graven images. There was one attempt to introduce monotheism to Egypt, on the part of Pharaoh Amenhotep, Akhenaten, but it was never accepted and died with him. Only Moses and his followers gave momentum to the new concept. This is why 1 refers to Egypt and bondage and commands. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. The earthly interpretation meant exactly what it said. That there was but one God, and that he forbade the creation of any other gods, in any form. In 2, he stipulates such forms, similar to those of the Egyptians. And in 3, he clearly forbids the worship of such images, threatening punishment for this false worship and promising mercy for those who obey his law. To many in future generations, these words seemed almost childish, and they were reinterpreted, notably by the prophet Ezekiel. The reluctance to accept the literal meaning of the words demonstrated the development of humanity over the generations. Today, the symbolic meaning is clear. I am God, who led you out of the bondage of materialism. I am the only source of all earthly and spiritual power. Do not attribute such power to any other. Do not shape images, in your mind, for the purposes of worshipping them. Do not attempt to worship anything or creature which is in your earthly experience, for I am invisible and these are but my creations. If you attempt these things, my law will return your error to you, and to those you have taught to follow in your error. But if you follow in the truth, the manifestations of your error will be corrected. I will bestow mercy on those who follow my commandments. Many of the Hebrews continued to take these words so literally that until recently there was no sign of any image in their synagogues. The same literalism in interpreting the Bible is true in many Christian denominations as well. The Levites so burdened themselves with the restrictions and impositions found in Leviticus that they could never fulfill the more than 600 requirements and rituals prescribed for daily existence. They condemned themselves to what they thought was failure in the eyes of God. The Bible was never meant to be read this way. It is a psychological and metaphysical treatise, a book of truth. It does not give orders, it explains, and provides advice for all circumstances of life on all levels of existence. For, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain," refers to errors we have already discussed. It means not to invoke the name of the Lord in asking for what you do not truly want. You do not really want God to damn another to hell. And if you ask it, you are only asking misfortune for yourself. You will not be held guiltless asking for such favors. The commandment also refers to your name as well, for on the higher plane, you are a part of God. You are not to abuse your own best interests with such phrases as, my bad memory, my lousy luck, my poor health, and so on. The law will not hold you guiltless, it will live up to your words, because they are decrees made in your name, the name of your higher self, which is of God. Thou shalt not fornicate. I have changed this chapter heading from that in the table of contents of the original 10 Commandments to illustrate a point, that the words Moses handed down were also changed. The original was thou shalt not commit adultery. The same change was made in Matthew 19:9, probably by the same ecclesiastical zealots. It has been suggested that, at the time these changes were made, the word fornication referred only to adulterous activity. Possibly this is so, but the change is still a gratuitous one. Fornication refers to sexual activity while unmarried. Adultery refers to sexual activity on the part of married people outside of the marriage. The Latin root is ad to, by, plus alter, other. This is, not so incidentally, the same basis for the word adulterate, meaning pollution or dilution by other materials. Which makes the insertion of this word into the Bible an adulteration itself. Note also that adultery in the Bible is often used in the sense of idolatry, worshipping another. This sense is also a part of the commandment. It would have been impossible for a man as wise and enlightened as Moses, schooled as he was in Hermetic principles, to have instructed man to try and defy the principle of generation. The principle works automatically on every plane. It is the same principle which causes atomic attraction and the formation of molecules. The laws of attraction, cohesion and adhesion are integral parts of the principle, as are gravity, magnetism and, on the atomic level, strong force and weak force. Without these forces, no matter would have existed above the level of the most basic subatomic particle. Attraction is the affinity of particle, adhesion is the self-determination of the individual atom to accept or reject another atom or particle. Cohesion is the ability of atoms to clump together. The strength of these laws is given awesome expression in the energy required to split the atom, and the energy given off when it happens. The principle is equally expressed among people, as is the principle of correspondence, as it is above, so it is below, as it is below, so it is above. Or, as the Kybalion says, it is by studying the monad, the most primitive unit of life, that one reaches the angel. Principles act automatically. The laws of adhesion and cohesion among atoms might well be termed fornication between humans, yet it is a process that goes on throughout the natural kingdoms. It's as automatic as the bee's transmission of pollen from one flower to another. Are we to presume that the Creator would hinder or prohibit the processes he set in motion? It's common knowledge that, by opposing a principle or force, we multiply the force driving it. A dammed river will find another course, or a lake will form, building up potential energy, the principle behind hydroelectric power. We are still of the animal kingdom, we still reproduce through the sexual process. Perhaps we shall evolve beyond this stage of development to a point where the principle of generation manifests itself in another way, but we are still a long way from graduating to a higher order of existence as a species. Students often ask, when presented with this concept, if we all evolved at once, what would happen to the human race? The answer lies in your point of view. We would still be we, whatever our state of being. And another evolving species might well come up to fill the gap, and call themselves humanity. There will always be someone at the lower levels. This is one level of meaning in Jesus saying, "The poor you shall always have with you." He meant not only the economically poor, but the underdeveloped in knowledge, experience, and evolution as well. Revelation also states that the Lord announced that at this time of evolution, no more children will be born. Perhaps we are entering that phase even now, for, though population is increasing at an incredible rate, birth rates will soon start to decline. Another description of this evolutionary era was given by Jesus as, when the veil of shame falls, that is when we realize that shame is artificial, that all the veil, which is ignorance, can hide is truth, and when truth is universally known, we will be ready for that evolutionary graduation. A perfect example of that veil of ignorance is the erroneous use of the word fornication. By focusing so much attention on the natural, we have made it seem unnatural. In effect, we have tried to oppose the principle of generation, and it simply can't be done. By stemming that river, we have caused it to seek other channels, and we have produced mental aberrations, sexual deviations, frustration, dishonor, shame, and punishment. Much of it due to the arbitrary substitution of a single word. Bonsai trees, small and twisted, have their beauty as curiosities. But they are still distortions of what was meant to be, stunted versions of what they might have been, without intervention, as are the caged bird, the chained leopard, the gelded stallion. We have modified truth and modified the scriptures out of ignorance, or to gain power over others. Metaphysically, the meaning of, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," is "Thou shalt not misinterpret or misapply the law." Because you will not be able to, because your attempt to do so will only bring misery back on yourself. The commandment refers to that very fanaticism through which it has been, itself, misinterpreted. To Jesus, that fanaticism was more repulsive, more deserving of punishment than unfettered sexuality. As he expressed it, "Woe unto thee, Chorazin, woe unto thee Bethsaida, for it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at the judgment than for thee." Chorazin and Bethsaida were the centers of religious zealotry and fanaticism in those days, while Tyre and Sidon were known for their sexual profligacy. Thus, he was saying that fanaticism was far more punishable in the eyes of the Lord than sexual transgressions. What about adultery in the strict sense? Let's go back to Matthew 19:3-12. "The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away, divorce, his wife for every cause? And he answered and said unto them, Have ye not read, that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and the twain shall be one flesh? What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. They said unto him, Why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart suffered you to put your wives away, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, Whosoever shall marry another, except it be for fornication, committeth adultery, and whosoever marrieth her that is put away doth commit adultery. The double parentheses above indicate the post-scriptural adulteration I referred to earlier. Christ did not believe that two wrongs make a right. His disciples say unto him, If the case of a man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. But he said unto them, All men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs made eunuchs by other men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. The case referred to is abstention from sexual activity, whether from physical or psychological impotence or by choice. Christ's answer here is that, if they choose to marry, the two are still one flesh, in at least the spiritual sense. And that is the sense that counts. The principle of generation is still active, in the laws of attraction, adhesion and cohesion. If a woman seeks gratification outside the marriage because of this situation, is this adultery? Technically and physically, yes. But is it an exception to the rule? No. And Christ implies that this is none of our business, that it is between the man and wife. Some people can handle the situation, some cannot. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. Now let's go back to the metaphysical side of the question. There is a balance in the sexes, in that there is, indeed, a man, for every woman, for these are two halves of a spiritual cell, they are created as one and indivisible. On the earthly plane, they are separate beings, but the original attraction is unavoidable. On earth there is a constant search for one's other half, but even if that search is fruitless, the two will ultimately be joined in the spiritual realm. This is encouraging news for people who are lonely, or who have made the wrong match, to know that other perfect half is waiting. And if we find that match on earth, no power on earth can separate them. We have met and joined our true partners in past lives, and it is that memory that kindles our continuous search for him or her. Man has clung to the saying, that which God has joined together, let no man put asunder. But it has been misinterpreted as a reference to marriage, which is a civil or religious ceremony, and not to that true spiritual union forged by God, which the marriage may or may not represent. This saying is not an indictment of divorce, which is simply another human convenience, but a consolation, offered by a loving God, telling us that, whatever else happens, that true union still exists, and cannot be severed. Jesus spoke in parables, stories in which the meaning was clear in the situation, not merely in the words, which he knew would suffer in translation, or even in repetition. The words might change, but the story, the metaphor, does not. Jesus' reference to the eunuch is parabolic. It can be taken in the literal sense and still be seen for the analogy which it is. His reference to eunuchs, for the kingdom of heaven's sake, refers to those who have chosen to channel their human energies, including the sexual drive, into a dedication to the studies that will help them evolve toward a higher being, even in this earthly environment. This is the basis for the justification of a celibate priesthood. As Jesus said, He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. This is one commandment that scholars and ecclesiastics are most reluctant to discuss. Even Jesus was a bit cryptic, couching his answers in parable form. The reason is that we are still earthbound animals, barely into a true mental state. There is conflict within us between pure reason and our instincts and drives, and maintaining a balance is most difficult. Let us remember the real meaning of the commandment, that we cannot commit adultery. And if, in trying, we bring hurt to another, that hurt will come back to us. Let us also remember the time when a woman, caught in adultery, was brought before Jesus. According to the laws of Israel, she should have been stoned to death. Jesus stooped and wrote idly in the earth at his feet. They continued to ask his opinion, and he responded, "He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone at her." Again he stooped and wrote in the earth. When he looked up, the woman stood alone. He asked her, "Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee?" She answered, "No man, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more." Recommendation: any book on metaphysics should be read many times. Every re-reading brings better understanding. Repetition is the basis of the treatments described in these pages, because only that which is practiced remains with us. What is read once and is not used, disappears. The end.